Hello. In this session, we're going to see how you can put a non-connector item on the catalog using only Visual Studio. So we're just going to use Visual Studio and the DataMiner Integration Studio, DIS, to put something on the catalog without using any CI/CD in this particular case. So without further ado, let's jump in. So first thing you've got to do is open Visual Studio. So when you have Visual Studio 2022 in this case, if you have a different version, the UI might be a little different, but it should still work. But recommending Visual Studio 2022 here, we will create a new project. So clicking on New Project, if you have DIS, you should find a bunch of templates. So these Visual Studio templates are released alongside the DIS, the extension on Visual Studio for DataMiner. If you, at the top right, filter on DataMiner, you'll find all of these extensions. Now, I mentioned non-connector items, so there's plenty to choose from. We could go with a simple automation script, or we could use an ad hoc data source, or a user-defined API. Now, in this case, let's just, keep it simple and stupid. So we're just going to use the simplest thing we can, which is a automation script project. So selecting that template, clicking on next, we'll now enter a wizard. So in this wizard, and I love wizards, make everything a lot easier, we're going to start with the project name. So I'm just going to call this, let's just say this is test 1, just a simple test 1. Now, I'm just going to add it to my default location here. Solution name, going to leave that alone as well. Now, very important here, do not check this place solution and project in the same directory. I tried getting rid of that. I really did, but I wasn't able to. If ever this checkbox disappears, think about me and think of how happy I will be. So do not check this box, leave it empty, make sure you fill in the solution name and the project name, and we'll go to the next page. On the next page, we'll simply fill in the author. That can just be your initials or your name. And we're going to indicate that I wish to create a DataMiner package. So this is going to make sure that this automation script is going to be packaged inside of a package, a DataMiner application package, which we can install or which we can upload on the catalog. So mark that checkbox to create the DataMiner package. Now, as I mentioned in this specific tutorial, we will not be doing any CI/CD, so we'll leave this to none. If you can see, by the way, that it says GitHub CI/CD, if you want to use a different CI/CD, also leave this disabled. So we'll leave it to none, and we're just going to create this project now. Let's give it a little moment here as we create it. And you should see that this template adds quite a lot of default information, a lot of standard folders. You will notice that we'll have something with the catalog information in there. So that's the metadata that will indicate what you're going to put on the catalog. So going in this, the first thing you'll get is a very nice getting started. Now, this getting started is going to be different depending on what you select in the wizard. So in this case, if we click on the preview button here, we can actually see a getting started that explains a little bit about what we just created. So we have something here that is configured to create a DataMiner package. So that was that checkbox that we marked there to create a package. It actually indicates here if you just compile or build a project, you'll already get a DataMiner package that contains your automation script. So we can see here, we've got test1 XML. So this should be familiar to people who have worked with automation scripts. This is your XML file that configures the automation script, but more importantly, the code is then actually inside of your, in this case, test1 CS file. But in here, you could write all your automation script code. Now, if I simply right-click and say rebuild or build, you'll notice that it's going through all the building, it succeeded. And now if I actually go in the File Explorer, so you can right-click again on the project and go to your File Explorer. Once you're in your File Explorer, if we look at the default output location, which is the bin debug in this case, could be release, but bin debug and then net, you'll find DataMiner build. Now in here, you already have a DMAP. So that's already something you could, if you have a remote desktop to a DataMiner, you could go to that DataMiner through remote desktop and then double click and install it like that. That's an option. But we want to put it on the catalog so that you can deploy it from the catalog to one or more systems. How do we do that? Well, if we go back to the getting started, so if you're ever in doubt, have a look at the getting started again, we'll notice here, how do I publish to the catalog? Well, publishing to the catalog is rather simple because we've built it into, this is with the new Skyline DataMiner SDKs, we've built it inside of the actual publishing process of Visual Studio. So similar to how when you say right-click build, it gives you a DMAP. If you right-click and say publish, you'll get to a publish to with the target location that says it's going to be put on the catalog DataMiner services with the following GUID. If you click on publish here, it's actually going to attempt to put it on the catalog. Now, you'll notice, and if you have been following along, that you get this error. Completely normal, you're supposed to get an error because we're pretty good here at Skyline, but we cannot do black magic. We cannot do it yet. So what does that mean? It means you don't have a token. It doesn't mean, it means you have no, you need to indicate, what is the organization that you want to put the catalog, that you want to put the item on the catalog under. And you also want to, have some authentication there. You need credentials to be able to do that. So it actually indicates that it failed. So if we click OK, we can see here that it's actually missing user secrets and or environment variables. Now, again, when in doubt, head back to the getting started. Now it actually mentions here that to publish manually, you need to obtain an organization key with the following scopes: register, read, and download for catalog items or catalog versions. So let's start by actually doing that. So going to admin DataMiner services, quick little handy link here. I'll just log in real quickly. Actually, I might already be logged in, but don't mind that. Give me a quick moment here as I log in. So we're logging in, and in here I'm going to then grab there we go. So we are now in the admin DataMiner services. No need to save my password here. So at the top right, remember to select the correct organization. Now you notice I have quite a few of them. That's because I test a lot and I have to do a lot of things. In your case, you'll probably only have one or two, but select the organization you want, go to the keys at the left here, and then you can either use a key that already exists that has the correct scopes, or we can actually create a new key. So in this case, let's make a new one, and this is just for the Empower test. Now, I mentioned registering catalog items, downloading catalog versions, and reading catalog items. So pretty much, let's grab all three of those. That's what you need to upload everything to the catalog. If you want to use the same key to eventually deploy something to a DataMiner through other tooling, you'll also want to say deploy a version. But in this case, all we're interested in is getting it on the catalog. So we're going to create this key, give this a moment as it gives us that token. Right, a new key has been created called Empower Test. So I'm gonna have to look for it because this is, as you can see, it's quite a, we've been using this a lot. So Empower Test is down there. I'm going to already copy that over, but I might need to do it again in a moment because now where do you store this token? So now we have this key, but where do we put it? Well, again, when in doubt, look for the getting started. And it says to secure the key in Visual Studio using the Visual Studio user secret. So if you right click on a project, you should find something called manage user secrets. So if you click on that, it'll open up a small JSON file. Now, what's cool about this JSON file is that it's only for your user. So if you hook this up to a source control like GitHub or GitLab or anything like that, this file and this content will never actually be committed or added into your repository. So it's perfectly safe and secure on your machine. Now, it is going to be plain text, but in my case, I will be removing the token after the video, so don't even try it. But having a look at getting started, it gives us exactly the format that we need. So I'm going to copy this. I'm going to make sure that is the format. And now you see here, we need to fill in the key that we just created. So going back real quickly to all the different keys, I will copy mine over once more, and I'm going to fill in that key, saving the file. And now, what happens if I publish? Now, if I publish, it should actually use that token. It'll use everything we've built into DIS itself, and it's going to actually put that on the catalog. Now, how can we be sure? Well, you're able to click the navigate button when finished, and it should actually find that item. However, if you get something like this, make sure that you are signed in by clicking on the top right to sign in. Because this is a private artifact, it means you need to be under the correct organization. But here we go. Test 1 is now on that. And you'll see it made a version, a 1.0.0 version, and that one contains our automation script. A little quick fun thing here. You'll notice that when you went there, it has a description in the catalog that's just a cute little image that says work in progress, still working on it. If you want to just update your catalog information without actually providing a new version of your automation script, you simply do that by publishing again without changing the version. How do you change the version? Say that is if you double click on your project, you'll notice that the version of your project is the version that goes in the catalog. So if I change this to a 1.0.1, for example, and I will publish it again. Give it a moment here. As we do that, you should notice when I now go back there, it immediately has, or it should have, there we go, a 1.0.1. So that is the new version that we created. Now, there's an error I'm getting here simply because this is a test organization that doesn't have an agent connected to it. That's just fine. Now, I wanted to show you how you can change this description quite easily without actually having to do a new version. Well, simply, if we go to the catalog information at the right here, we can actually change the README, and we can actually say, instead of this image, let's just say this is a quick test without CI/CD, but it shows how easy it is to use in Visual Studio. There we go. So I'm just going to save that. And if I now publish this without changing the version, what it's going to do is simply update the catalog information. So again, if I now have a look on here, and if I refresh this page, you'll now see the image is gone and it has updated with the new information. So it's as simple as that. That is how you begin with a Visual Studio template of anything that's not a connector currently. We're working on that. We're trying to get connectors to behave in the same way, but they're a little bit of a special animal, so eventually maybe we'll get it. But for automation scripts, user-defined native APIs, anything like that, you can use this to very quickly get something private on your organization catalog without having to use any CI/CD and by just using the built-in Visual Studio environment. So thank you very much, and I hope you enjoyed this little session. We are going to be seeing how you can put a non-connector item on the catalog, this time using Visual Studio and GitHub as our CI/CD platform and our source control. So getting that done is very, very simple. We're gonna go through the initial way of working, and the only thing you really need as a prerequisite is you're gonna need a GitHub account, you're gonna need Visual Studio, and you're going to need the DataMiner Integration Studio extension for Visual Studio. But without further ado, let's jump in. So let's start by opening Visual Studio, and we're going to be creating a completely new project. So if you have DIS, you will have, if we go to create a new project here, you should have a bunch of templates. Now I mentioned non-connector items. We are hard at work trying to get the connectors to work in the same way, but for now, stick to automation scripts, user-defined APIs, ad hoc data sources, all of that nice and fun stuff. So in this particular case, how about we, just to show you, let's use a user-defined API. So if we select this template, by the way, if you're not easily finding these, you can either search for them, or there's actually a filter at the top right here where you can say DataMiner and then filter on those. Now, having done that, let's click on next with a user-defined API, and I'm just going to call this test user-defined API. There we go. I'm just going to call it test user-defined API. I'm going to keep the solution name the same, and as you might have seen in other videos, don't mark or don't check this checkbox to place it in the same directory. That'll cause some issues later down the line. I wish I could remove the checkbox. I tried. I wasn't able to. Maybe one day I will. So leave it unchecked for now, and we'll click on next. Now, clicking on next allows you to now fill in the author. So I'm just going to fill in my name here, and I'm going to indicate I want to create a DataMiner package. So what this means is that this user-defined API needs to be put in its own package. Just that user-defined API in a package that's going to be able to get installed on a DataMiner, or in our case, we're just going to put it on a catalog so you can then deploy it from there to one or more systems. Now, we are going to be using CI/CD this time, and because within Skyline we're doing a lot with GitHub, so the GitHub one is actually built in. So if we go with GitHub Basic, which is very good for just a demo or just showcasing. So I'm going to use that. It's very good if you just want to play around, test with it for the first time. It doesn't have too much setup. The complete one is pretty much what we use here at Skyline. It contains a lot more quality control. It contains static code analysis. This is pretty much what we are actually using for all the production code. But for just this demo or testing around, let's go with basic. Okay? We're going to create this, give it a moment as it sets up the entire project from our templates, from our templates that are installed alongside DIS. Now, once it's done this, you should notice that it immediately opens up a getting started. Now, whenever you're in doubt about what I have to do, go to the getting started. I know a lot of people don't like reading too much text, but this one's really good because it just gets generated with the information that's important to you based on what you selected in the wizard. So in this case, you'll notice that it mentions that to get a DataMiner application package, you can simply build the project. So pretty much if I right-click here and I select rebuild or build and give it a moment, if I actually go to the file explorer and we go to the bin folder, the debug, and we look for the DataMiner build, you'll actually notice there's already a package in there simply by compiling the project. Can be handy if you just remote desktop to an agent and want to install it like that. But in this case, we want to put it on a catalog, and not just that, we want to do it through an automatic CI/CD pipeline in GitHub. So there's some source control there, there's versioning, there's commit history, all of that niceness. So if we scroll down a bit, you'll notice what we need to do to actually do this. So to publish to the catalog, it mentions that it was created with a CI/CD basic workflow. So we need to follow these steps. So I'll go through that. If you get lost, don't worry. Again, reach to the getting started and it'll explain everything you have to do. Now, first start by going to Git, and we're going to say we're going to create a repository. So I'm going to do that. I'm selecting GitHub here because we have it filled in, and I'm actually going to use my Skyline account here. I might need to sign in once again just to make sure that everything here knows who I am. You might need to do that as well occasionally, but there we go. So I'm going to place it under my own personal account. Feel free to do the same. Everything should work just fine. So test user-defined API is my repository name. I'm not going to give it a description for now. I can leave it private. That'll work just fine. And I'm going to say create and push. Now, this is actually in the background now, creating the entire GitHub, the GitHub location. Now, a way to quickly go there is if you click on Git in Visual Studio and go to GitHub, in that drop-down menu, you can say view pull requests. Now, I don't really need pull requests right now specifically, but it's a quick way to go to the right GitHub location with your new repository. So if we check in here, you'll notice we already have all the code in there now. Not only that, if we go to the Actions tab in GitHub, and the Actions tab is pretty much what the CI/CD and all of that automation is called within GitHub. You'll notice it actually has a few items here already running by default. On the left, you can see all the workflows, and a couple of them were added automatically through that template. You remember when in the wizard we said, I want to do it through GitHub CI/CD, basic CI/CD, this is actually the basic workflow getting added here. Now, if we look for the basic workflow, you can click on that and select it if you want. It kind of filters the runs that you see here. You'll see a one with a red X. So that means this workflow failed. It's an error. But that's okay. If you click it, and if you keep clicking, every time you see that error, you'll eventually end up in this page. Now, this page shows you what happened automatically in that workflow and where it failed. Now, you can see it failed on trying to validate something called a DataMiner secret token. Now, if you stop, wait, think a little bit, you'll remember, or you should, notice that that makes sense, because you never actually said what is the authentication, what is the token, under which organization should this item be placed in the catalog. So we're pretty good here at Skyline, but we're not able to do that kind of magic yet. So you need to fill in that token. Now, it does help with the error message. If you read the error message, it actually says that there's a DataMiner token that isn't set, so we are not able to release anything. So we need to create or reuse an admin DataMiner service token by visiting admin DataMiner services. So let's start by doing that. If we visit admin DataMiner services, it has a handy link in the error. Make sure we are on the right organization. So I'm selecting Internal Empower 2025. We're going to the keys on the left because we need to make a token. We need to make something to identify our workflow that it's going to put something on the catalog. So we're going to actually create a new key. I'm going to call this test user defined. There we go. And permissions that you need is to everything to do with catalog. So registering a catalog item, downloading a catalog version, reading a catalog item. And you could also have deployments if you want to, in the future, after this tutorial, also deploy it through other tooling. You might also mark that one, but this one is currently optional for this specific tutorial. So downloading, reading, and registering catalog items. So we're going to create that key, so the test user defined. Now, this is a testing organization, so it's going to have a lot of keys. So bear with me as I, in a moment here, scroll through it to find the new key that I created. It's taking a little bit of time as it gets created, and it seems to have timed out. Now, I don't know why I did that, but how about we just keep going, because there's also an Empower test token I made previously, so I'm just going to use that. If you ever get something similar happen, just try and create it again, but for the interest of time, I'm going to reuse Empower test here. So I'm going to copy this key over. Actually, I think I know what's going on. I may need to sign in again. No, there we go. Primary key has been copied to my clipboard. So I now have my token. If I go back to the tab with the workflow, I'll see the rest of the error message says that, go to keys, get the keys with the right permissions. We did that. Copy the value of the token. We did this. And now we need to set something called a DataMiner token secret. Now it gives, again, quite a handy link. So if we click on that link, we can now immediately create a new secret for the repository. And that secret is going to be called a DataMiner token. We're going to copy in the value of that token that I have in my clipboard. I'm going to add that secret, so DataMiner token. All right? Now, again, heading back to the workflow now, we can actually simply rerun this entire thing. So at the top right, you'll find rerun jobs. We can say to just rerun all the jobs. That's going to rerun that entire workflow again. So I'm going to rerun this. And now we should see that it starts going through this workflow, and if everything goes all right, it should know what to do. So we can already see it's blazing fast, it's rushing through all of these steps. It's already gone past the step that it failed previously, trying to validate the token. So it's going and going and going, and in the end, everything will end up on the catalog. So we called this the test user defined API. So if I actually go to the catalog here, let's do that. I need to make sure that I am on internal Empower here, and give it a moment. I just need to make sure that the pipeline actually finishes. I think the very first time it runs, it takes a little bit longer because it needs to install something called Mono, but it should be caching that in the background. At least with the complete workflow, we're caching it. It might not do it with the basic, now that I think about it. So it takes a little bit of time, maybe a minute, minute and a half. But you can see it's going through it pretty fast, running some tests. If you have any unit tests in your project, it'll also run that with the basic, but especially also with the complete CI/CD workflow. Okay, there we go. We have it green now. That means if I now look for the test user defined API, there we go. You'll notice that I have my version in there. This is called the 001. The basic workflow, not really intended for production use. You'll notice why, because let's do something real quick. If we want to change the catalog metadata and then release a new version, for example, or have some new code, we can go here in our Visual Studio with the actual code, going to the catalog information. Let's get rid of the image and say, hello world, you know, the classic programmer start. Hello world. Now, what we can do now is if we go to Git here, we can say I want to commit or stash. So that means I'm going to actually say this is new code. It changed the catalog metadata. This is just a commit message that's going to end up on GitHub under source control so that other developers can see what was added or what was done during this change. So I'm going to say I need to configure apparently my email safe. Yeah, it says here. This is a test laptop, so I need to do a bunch of things for the very first time. But hey, if you have to do them as well, now you see how. So change the catalog metadata. I'm going to use the little arrow here and say commit all and push. Now doing that happens on the main branch or the master branch in this case, and the basic workflow is created in such a way that every commit and every push on the master is going to re-trigger it, is going to make a new catalog version. So that's why I'm saying for production code, the complete workflow doesn't work like that. For that one, you have to actually make a tag or a release before it ends up on the catalog. This one will do it for every push to the main or master. So having done that, if we look back to GitHub, or we can go again from Visual Studio. If you go to Git, if you go to GitHub there, you can view the pull request just to quickly get on there. And we'll see under the actions here that it's actually saying the change the catalog metadata commit message. You can see it's running the basic workflow right now automatically and is going to end up putting it on the catalog. Again, it's going through that mono installation, even though we are in Ubuntu, so it's pretty quick. So we are going through all of that pretty quick, running any unit tests that you have in your code. If one of those fails, it will not be put on the catalog. So that's the basics of the continuous integration, making sure that everything you write keeps consistently being green. So having done that, it's gone through everything. So if I check on the catalog again, if I refresh this page, we should now see, oh, there we go already. There's a new description, the image is gone, it says hello world, and we have a version 002. So it is as simple as that. If I went a little quick in this, no worries, go back, have another look. If you want to just do it through text, remember to always reach back to the getting started. Everything in the getting started pretty much says the entire tutorial I just gave you. So I hope that was good, and yeah, good luck. In this tutorial, I'm going to show you how to work and create a complex combined install package. So complex isn't the right word, it's actually very simple, and I'm going to be here together with you to show you how to make them. Now, to then put that package, the package that contains things like automation scripts, things like connectors, things like anything you can think of pretty much to install it on DataMiner, to put that on a catalog, I will refer you to some of the other sessions to do it either through Visual Studio directly or through CI/CD. Both apply the same way to this. But for this, I'm going to focus more on the Visual Studio environment using the DataMiner Integration Studio extension, and I'll guide you a little bit through what this installation package has to offer us. So getting started there, we'll make a new Visual Studio project to hold or combined or package. So doing that, let's click on Visual Studio 2022 here in this case, and we're going to create a new project. Now, on the top right, you can filter on DataMiner. You'll see all of the nice templates that we are providing alongside with the DIS installation. Now, in this case, we're going to look for something called a DataMiner package project. So this is a project that's going to create the DMApp that will contain several other items all combined in this one package. So clicking that, let's go next. I'm going to call this the combined package test. Combined package test, make sure you do not check this box here to place it in the same direction. Leave that not checked, leave that unchecked. I'm trying to get rid of it, I still haven't. One day I will, and everyone will remember me and be very happy for me, I hope. But for now, leave it unchecked, fill in the project name, fill in the solution name, and we'll click next. In there, we're just going to fill in the author. So I'm just going to fill in my name here. And in this particular case, I'm not going to add any CI/CD. If this were production level code, I would recommend the complete CI/CD, unless of course you're not using GitHub in your organization. Then you just use none and you create your own CI/CD workflow in the backend. But for this particular case, I'm not doing any CI/CD. I want to focus on the actual creation of that combined package. So clicking create, we're going to give it a little moment as it creates this project. And what it's going to be showing us is that we'll get a whole bunch of folders pre-created that will allow us to add things from either the catalog or other things that are already in the same solution. Now, as usual, with this new Skyline SDK, you begin with getting a getting started markdown. If ever you are in doubt on what to do and where to go, simply open the getting started and have a read through. If you don't see this nicely, make sure on the top left there's this preview button, gives you a little bit of a nicer flow than just the background markdown. So creating a DataMiner application package, as with all our SDKs, if you've marked it to create a package, simply building it will actually give you the package already. So if you compile or build it and we go to the File Explorer, we go to the default output location, so the bin, in this case debug, and then net48 DataMiner build, you already see that there is a package in there that contains, well, in this case, not much, because we didn't add anything to our package. Now, we'll notice, so again, everything I'm about to say can pretty much be read in the getting started as well. But for now, let's take a quick look at what we have here. So on the right, in my case, we have the Solution Explorer here. We can see a bunch of things. Let's start by the first option, which is the catalog information, something you might have seen in the other sessions, in the other tutorials, and also anytime you work with a SDK, DataMiner SDK style. This pretty much contains all the information that you want to add as metadata in the catalog if you publish it, if you upload. So it has a README file that's going to show you that, in this case, still working on it. You can remove that, change it with whatever you want. It also has the manifest YAML file in there with some information pre-filled. You can add a few changes in there if you want. You can add some tags on the catalog, stuff like that. So this is all the catalog information is under catalog information. Makes sense, right? Well, similar for content of the package, that is under package content. Now this one is split up a little bit. Let's start by one of the things here is the catalog references. Catalog references, this is when you want to create a package that contains items that are already on the catalog. So you can see here, it's commented out. If we remove the commented out code, these are just some examples here. So nothing else except some examples. So you can see that if you add a catalog reference, you give it a name, for example, example catalog item, and you give it a GUID, and then you just fill in the version here. Or if you want a specific range, you can say it needs to be the range 100. Or you can also indicate you want to get the latest pre-release of that specific range. So this pretty much allows you to combine things, put them from the catalog directly inside of your package. I should be able to actually show this to you. So if we go to the actual catalog and let's use something here. So we'll just look for user-defined API, my user-defined API. Sure, we'll just use this one. That's perfectly fine. So at the top here, you'll actually see this GUID. So this is the identifier of the catalog item. If you copy that, you can actually fill that in as a GUID. Right there. In fact, let's go by, let me have a quick look what the version was that is on here currently. So there's a 001 on there. So we're going to say this is the GUID. We're going to give this a name, my user defined API. It's always best to just name it the same thing you saw on the catalog. And this was the 001 version, 001 version. So I'm going to remove everything else. There we go. Now, if we rebuild this, it should try and grab that item and add it to the package. Let's see if that actually works. So rebuild, it didn't work. Oh no, my demo is ruined. No, it isn't. It's perfectly normal that it didn't work. As you might have seen in other sessions, you need to have authentication, otherwise anyone could just grab anything from the catalog, which isn't the point. So you actually see here that it's missing a secret. It's missing a user secret DataMiner token to actually communicate and authenticate with the catalog to download this particular catalog item and then add it to your own package. So how do we do that? Well, when in doubt, head back to the getting started. Now, if we look in the getting started, it will actually indicate to you, adding content from the catalog, that you need to have these user secrets. So we can select this little piece of code here. This is just a little bit of JSON. And if you right click on the project and you go to manage user secrets, we can fill in that little code in there. And now we need to fill in the key, the organization key, to actually authenticate and be able to download. Now, doing that, we can actually, there might actually be a link in the getting started here. Yep, there we go. So we're going to click to admin DataMiner services, make sure I am on the right organization. Going to the keys, you can make a new key that has the scope to download catalog versions. I already have such a key, so I'll be using the test user-defined or the empower test actually. Let's use that one. So I'll just copy over that token and going back, right-clicking on the project, finding manage user secrets, and then we fill in the token there. And now when I rebuild this solution, everything should work perfectly fine. Rebuild completed. And again, if I have a look now in the actual DataMiner build here, you'll notice that the DMAP is in there and it's actually quite a lot bigger. Why is that? Well, Here's a little quick little tip for you. I don't have 7-zip installed here, but if you have 7-zip, you can actually unzip it and have a quick look inside, see what's in there. Do make sure you don't change anything because you'll break the signature and the DMAP will be worthless. But have a look in there. You should see that now that item from the catalog is in there. And it's very similar for other items from the catalog, from within the catalog references. You can add as many references as you want in there with other GUIDs, with other names and other versions and so on. So that is for something from the catalog. Very cool stuff. Now, what else is cool? Imagine you just want this package to contain an automation script or a user-defined API that will only ever be in this package. So you're not intending to reuse it in different packages or release it through different packages. This is the one. This is the one single source of truth for both the code and the package that will contain it. Well, in that case, you can simply add new projects to the same solution. So if you right-click and you say Add New Project, you can simply add, for example, an ad hoc data source. So doing that, clicking next, there we go. We'll just call it project 1, it's fine now. We won't mark anything here. You don't even need to mark create DataMiner package because we're already doing that through that other project. That project is making the entire combined package, so we don't need to mark this because that would make a single package with just the user-defined API and nothing else. So leaving this empty, we're just going to create this. And now what happens when you rebuild all of this, it'll actually contain this ad hoc data source within that same package. So again, you're probably not going to see it very well because it is a bit hidden in the background, but if I open up the file explorer and go back to the output folder, yeah, it's very unclear, but trust me, it's in there. So within this package now, we have both the item from the catalog and we have this ad hoc data source that we added in here. Now you can keep doing that, so we can add more and more and more. The only thing we cannot add like this is a connector. We're trying to get that to work, but we haven't managed it yet. If you want to add a connector in this, you can do so, but it will again be through the catalog references. So if it is on the catalog, you can add it. Now, a few more quick things that you can see here is something called setup content. Now, it has a nice little text in here about what this folder is. So pretty much, I'm just going to say it. That one contains everything that you want to be used during installation of the package, but it doesn't actually have to be installed on the system forever. So these are things like configuration files that are needed during installation, but not afterwards. So you can add things like that in there. And then actually code that executes during installation, if you simply click on the name of your, in this case, combined package CS file, if you double click on that, you'll find there's a code here already pre-filled in for a bit. And in here, you can actually add custom logic. So if you want to create elements with a connector, for example, you can actually do that from here. So a quick little tip there is if you go with the macros, I believe actually if you type in IDMS, it should work. Give me a second here. IDMS, does that work? It should work. Ah, here we go. CL get DMS. Tap, 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 there we go. And if you do that, you'll actually include the class library in there to then be able to work with the class library in order to create elements, create views, create services. All of that can be done through the install code right here. I think that about covers the most important parts for now. So there's a lot more you can do with this, but for that I will refer you to the documentation. Have a quick look what else you can do here. But you've got package content and you've got setup content. Actually, I was about to round off, but there is one thing that you might have noticed. Under package content, there's also companion files and low-code apps. You can indeed include those as well, and they don't need to be on the catalog already. So what you can do there is, if you right-click on low-code apps, you can actually say import a DataMiner low-code app. Now, unfortunately, I cannot really demonstrate this right now on this test laptop, because if you first need to have a connection to a DataMiner. Now, to do that, if you go to the DIS extensions, you can actually connect to a DataMiner. Now, hey, maybe there is something on here, I don't know. Let's try and see if I can actually connect. I see there is a local host agent installed on this laptop. We'll see if that actually connects or not. I'm not sure if it will. No, it doesn't. I'm sorry. This is a testing environment, but pretty much if you are connected to an agent in DIS and you right click on local dApps or dashboards, you can actually go to add and then import a DataMiner local dApp directly from the DataMiner that you were working on. So you can work in it through the editor in DataMiner and then import it here. And then this is how you make a combined installation package. You can have code installation, you can have things from the catalog, you can add projects directly in the source code, or you can import items from DataMiner. Yeah, that's pretty much all I wanted to show you about this one. So best of luck with this feature. I think it's really great and it's really empowering for everyone. Good luck.